What we know about the science and the neuroscience of implicit bias is that we can be great people and still get it wrong. We can be great people and our first thought before we think is one that reflects the stereotypes in the historical scripts about those people. And some of us get ashamed when they come to our minds, those thoughts. But they're there not because we're bad people, fundamentally. They're there because that's what's in the air, and that's what's held the country together. We're set up to give unequal care. We're literally neurologically scripted to see what's not there.
You're not born prejudiced. This is something that is learned. And as we begin to look at how nurses are educated, either through what may have been taught to them in lectures, what they may have seen in textbooks, or read in textbooks about various cultures. Maybe it's implied that one culture has a high pain tolerance, or one culture believes this or that. It becomes ingrained, and then when you're in clinical practice, sometimes that gets reinforced, either from the actions or microaggressions that colleagues may put forth. And after a while, you begin to believe that, well, maybe it is true that people of color may have a higher pain tolerance. A good example would be if I'm working in an emergency room and I'm taking care of someone who may be in a sickle cell crisis. That person has probably dealt with this condition all their lives. They have found ways to help ease the pain that perhaps we haven't thought about. So when you ask them, could you please rate your pain on a scale of 1 to 10, they may say that their pain is a 7. Well, you may think 7, that's pretty serious, but you're sitting there very calm, very collective, or maybe you're rocking back and forth or whatever, but we don't take into consideration this may be one of the adaptive ways that this person has found helps to ease their pain. So we automatically label them as, well, because you're not exhibiting pain the way I think you should be exhibiting pain, perhaps you're here just, you've got drug-seeking behavior, and you just want to get that shot of morphine or Demerol or whatever pain reliever we may be using, so that you can get your fix, and that's it. And sometimes that gets reinforced by that colleague who would say, oh, they're a frequent flyer in the emergency room. They're always here in pain, but look at them. They don't look like that they're in pain. So that sort of perpetuates that, the person who may have some doubt, if you see this a couple of times, maybe you begin to buy into the fact that this is not what I think a person who's in a sickle cell crisis should be acting, when in actuality we need to remember pain is what the patient says that it is. And it's our job as nurses to find out what are some of the ways that we can help to alleviate that pain. And it could be, yes, giving them the medication, but it could also mean repositioning or giving them a warm blanket or things of this sort. There's a lot of other measures that we could do that sometimes we may fail to do just because of the fact someone has made that implication that, oh, they're here again, and they're just here to get their fix, and then that's it.
The idea that we could group people from vastly different backgrounds, different cultures, different languages, different geographic regions into this group and say that this is their culture is mind-boggling to start with. But also when you look at those bullet points, many of them perpetuate false biological beliefs, stereotypes that are harmful. Still in nursing textbooks, I see references to Black people being exaggerating or overemphasizing their pain. And we know that there are huge disparities in terms of how pain is managed. And we know that Black and Hispanic people in particularly have their pain managed more poorly. So when you look at Hispanic, it says things like they believe that pain is part of life and punishment and that they have to endure it. Whereas it'll say for Asians, for example, that Asians are very stoic. And so you get the idea in your mind, if you're not familiar with different cultures, that that, oh, I've really got to push pain medicine for my Asian patient, which it may be totally invalid for them. And I'm not going to take as seriously the pain concerns of my Black or African American patients. So the way in which we teach cultural competency really perpetuates bias and stereotypes. Cultural humility, on the other hand, is about understanding that you cannot be competent in other people's cultures and that you have an opportunity to learn, and you need to listen and support people's needs and how they want their treatment plan to go. And I think that's a more realistic lens for nurses. And I think it also opens up for things like really providing individualized care. I'm multiracial. My family is white, Puerto Rican, and Black. I spend most of my time with my Puerto Rican and Black family. So that's a big part of my culture. But if you come into my room and you don't ask me what's important to me, you would never know that just by looking at me, right? And so I think it's really important for nurses to talk to the people who they accompany in care. Ask them specifically, do you have cultural beliefs that I can support you with? What are your goals for treatment? Here's the treatment plan. Does this work for you? That's the work we really have to be doing. And we should be doing that with every human being we encounter.
So ARC training is anti-racism cultural humility training. And it is really going back 400 years and studying our history, American history, about how this still shows up and plays out today in our world, in our society. I think that unless you have studied this as part of your curriculum in college or you've done your own work, there's that whole thing of slavery doesn't exist anymore. Well, what's a big deal? I treat everybody the same. And we sort of dissect the history of how we got here and how those things still matter and how they still show up and the impacts to that to all of us as a community, like redlining. Some people never knew what redlining is. And I always found it so fascinating to watch the transformation of people. It is flipping assumptions and beliefs that you have held on to your entire life. And I really believe that most people come from a place of integrity, and it just rocks that world. I always thought, I always knew and practiced fundamentally from being a good human being, as all nurses are. It really makes you question, what have I been doing this whole time? It's challenging a lot of the beliefs that you've had about yourself and the world and how that functions.
I try and teach folks not to be afraid of that part of yourself. If you can see the script of inequality before you perform it, if you can hear it, if you can feel it in your heart racing or your anger rising before you hurt someone, then you can interrupt it before you come to that point. So that's what I try and teach nurses. And again, at the level of self, there's the implicit bias. At the level of interpersonal interactions, there's that implicit bias that doesn't reflect our best selves, who we would want to be for patients.